The women of Victorian England were literally poisoning themselves for beauty every single day. They'd wake up, look in the mirror and think, you know what would make me more attractive? Literal poison. Arsenic complexion wafers to make the skin pale. Belladonna eye drops that could cause blindness. Lead face powder. Mercury makeup. And the craziest part, they knew these things were toxic. The warnings were right there on the packaging. But they did it anyway because being pretty was worth risking death. Forget horror movies. Just imagine waking up tomorrow in 1860 as a Victorian woman and realizing the day ahead involves lacing yourself so tight you can barely breathe, potentially going blind from your makeup routine, and having exactly zero legal rights. Modern Monday mornings don't seem so bad now, do they? So, yeah, if these stories work for you, subscribe. And I'm curious, what time is it where you are? Comment below. Last week, someone from Canada said they listened during lunch breaks. Not judging, just wasn't expecting that. All right, tonight it's Victorian England in 1860. But hold up. Get comfortable first. Fluff those pillows. Pull up that blanket. Trust me, once we get going, you won't want to move. So congratulations. You just woke up in 1860. The first thing you notice is the cold, not the gentle chill of forgetting to close a window, but a bone-deep penetrating cold that makes your teeth chatter. Unlike your cozy memory foam mattress, you're lying on what feels like a lumpy sack stuffed with straw. Your back already aches. The pillow beneath your head is hard and smells faintly of mildew. It's still dark, but not completely. A weak grey light filters through thin curtains. The room around you is unfamiliar, smaller than you're used to, with high ceilings and peeling wallpaper. And wait, is that green wallpaper? The gorgeous emerald colour catches your eye before you remember something terrifying. Victorian green wallpaper contained arsenic. It's literally seeping poison into the air you're breathing right now. Miss, are you awake? Miss? You nearly jump out of your skin as a young woman, barely more than a girl really, appears at your bedside. She's wearing a plain grey dress with a white cap and apron. A maid? You have a maid? We must hurry, miss. Your mother expects you downstairs for breakfast in 1 hour, and we have much to do. You open your mouth to ask what the hell is going on, but what comes out is, yes, Martha, please prepare my wash water. Wait, who's Martha? And why did those words come out of your mouth? You didn't decide to say them. The maid, Martha, apparently, nods and moves to a ceramic pitcher and basin in the corner. You realise with a sinking feeling that there's no bathroom attached to this room. No toilet. No shower. Just that little basin of water that Martha is now pouring from the pitcher. It's quite cold this morning, miss. I've added just a touch of rose water to your wash, as you prefer. As you prefer? You've never had a preference about rose water in your life, but somehow you know exactly how this works. Your body moves on autopilot, sitting up in bed and accepting the damp cloth Martha hands you. Instead of a proper shower, you're going to dab at your face and neck with this barely damp cloth in freezing cold air. The survival instinct immediately kicks in. This isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. In a time before antibiotics, before modern medicine, even a simple cold could kill you, and you're sitting here in a frigid room with your neck and chest exposed to the icy air, dabbing yourself with cold water. You shiver uncontrollably. The fire's catching nicely now, miss, Martha says, and you notice she's been stoking a small fireplace. The pitiful flames barely warm the air around it, let alone the entire room. Shall we begin your toilette? Your toilette? Oh, your morning beauty routine. And judging by the array of bottles, jars, and mysterious implements Martha is laying out on the dressing table, this is going to be a whole production. Is that the arsenic cream? You hear yourself ask. Yes, miss. Dr. Campbell's arsenic complexion wafers, as you requested. The apothecary assures they're perfectly safe. Just a very small amount of arsenic to clear the blood. Holy shit, you're about to literally eat arsenic for breakfast. And here's the thing. Part of you, the part that somehow knows how to be a Victorian woman, isn't even surprised. You know that pale skin is essential, a sign of wealth and beauty. Tanned skin meant you worked outdoors, a fate worse than death for a proper Victorian lady. And if achieving that perfect pallor meant slowly poisoning yourself, well, beauty is pain, right? Perhaps just half a wafer today, Martha, you hear yourself say. Your body, at least, seems to have some sense of self-preservation. But before you can dwell on the arsenic, Martha is already moving on to the next horror show. Your belladonna drops for your eyes, miss. This time, your modern brain jolts fully awake. Belladonna, also known as deadly nightshade, a highly toxic plant used to dilate women's pupils, giving them that wide-eyed, vulnerable look that Victorian men apparently found irresistible. It could cause blurred vision, headaches, or, blindness. Just a small drop in each eye, you hear yourself say, as if this is perfectly normal. Martha approaches with the dropper, and you can't help but flinch as she puts the poisonous liquid directly into your eyes. The burning sensation is immediate. Your eyes water profusely as the belladonna seeps into your corneas. Your vision blurs, and for a terrifying moment you wonder if you'll go blind. But then it settles, and when you blink away the tears, the world has a strange, hazy quality to it. Your pupils are now enormous, making you look perpetually surprised, and by Victorian standards, absolutely stunning. Now for your hair, miss. What fresh hell is this? You soon find out as Martha removes your nightcap, revealing your hair, which apparently hasn't been washed in weeks, months, because washing your hair too frequently in Victorian times was considered unhealthy. Instead, it was brushed vigorously to distribute the natural oils. 100 strokes every night. Martha starts brushing, and it hurts. Your scalp is tender, and the bristles of the brush feel like tiny knives, but you sit there and take it because what choice do you have? Now, miss, we must get you dressed before your complexion cream fully dries. Ah, yes, the main event. Getting dressed in 1860 is not the quick, casual affair you're used to. It's a military operation requiring assistance, patience, and an alarming disregard for internal organ health. First comes the chemise, a simple, loose-fitting undergarment that falls to your knees. Then the drawers, basically loose cotton shorts with an open crotch. Yes, really, it made using chamber pots easier. Then comes the corset. The corset. Your ribcage instinctively contracts at the sight of it. Made of whalebone and steel, it's designed to cinch your waist to an impossible size while pushing your breasts up to your chin. Arms up, miss, Martha instructs, and you comply. The corset goes around your torso, and Martha begins the lacing process from behind. With each pull, the corset tightens. Your lungs have less and less room to expand. Your ribs feel like they're being gradually crushed. I can't breathe, you gasp. Just a bit tighter, miss. Your waist was 19 inches at Lady Harrington's ball last week. Mrs. Fairchild's daughter had 18 and a half. Your mother was most displeased. Each pull of the laces feels like a vice crushing your internal organs. Because it is, your stomach, liver, and intestines are literally being compressed and displaced. This isn't just uncomfortable, it's potentially deadly. Digestive issues, breathing problems, even deformed ribs were common side effects of long-term corset wearing. But apparently, you've been doing this your whole life. Your body is already partially deformed to accommodate the torture device. You find yourself automatically adjusting your breathing. Shallow, upper chest breaths only. No deep breathing allowed. You'll faint if you try to exert yourself too much. There we are, miss. 19 inches exactly, Martha says with satisfaction, tying off the laces. You glance down and barely recognize your own body. Your waist is impossibly tiny, your breasts pushed up dramatically. You look like a cartoon character, an exaggerated hourglass that no human should naturally have. But there's no time to dwell on it because the dressing process continues. Next comes the crinoline, a cage-like structure made of steel hoops that holds your skirts out in an enormous bell shape. It weighs several pounds on its own and makes navigating doorways a strategic challenge. Then petticoats. Then finally, the dress itself. A deep blue morning dress with long sleeves, high collar, and enough fabric to make 3 modern dresses. The weight of it all is crushing. Between the corset restricting your torso and the crinoline and petticoats weighing down your lower half, you're essentially wearing a mobile prison, and you haven't even put on shoes, gloves, or a hat yet. Oh, your skin looks lovely with the arsenic, miss, Martha comments as she steps back to admire her work. So pale and clear. You stumble to the mirror, nearly tripping on your crinoline. The face staring back isn't yours. It's pale, gaunt, with dark ringed eyes that seem unnaturally large. The pupils are enormous thanks to the belladonna, giving you a perpetually startled look. Your waist is impossibly small, your posture forcibly erect due to the corset. You look beautiful by 1860 standards. You also look like you're slowly dying, which technically you are. Your gloves, miss, Martha says, holding out a pair of pristine white gloves, and your hat will need to be pinned securely. The hat is a small decorative thing that serves no practical purpose. It won't keep the sun off your face, that would darken your complexion, the horror, or keep you warm. It's purely decorative, pinned to your hair with long, sharp steel hat pins that could double as weapons in a pinch. Now, miss, your mother will be expecting you. Remember, Lady Harrington commented on your posture last week. Shoulders back, chin up. You try to take a deep breath to steady yourself, but the corset prevents it. All you can manage is a shallow gasp. One more thing, miss, Martha says, reaching for yet another bottle on the dressing table. Your rosewater mouthwash for fresh breath. At least that sounds normal, but as you swish the liquid around your mouth, you taste something metallic beneath the rose scent. You spit it back into the basin and see the water tinged slightly blue. Is there copper in this? You ask, horrified. Just a touch, miss. The latest thing from Paris. For brightness of the eyes and complexion. Great. You're ingesting copper now too. Add it to the arsenic, belladonna, and whatever toxic chemicals are in your face powder. As you prepare to leave your bedroom and face whatever fresh hell awaits you downstairs, you glance out the window. The streets below are barely visible through a thick yellow-brown fog, the infamous London pea super, a toxic mix of coal smoke, fog and pollution so thick you could sometimes barely see your hand in front of your face. People regularly died from respiratory issues caused by this smog. It dawns on you that everything in this world is trying to kill you. Your beauty products, your clothes, even the air itself. And yet Victorian women navigated this deadly obstacle course every single day, often with a smile on their arsenic-brightened faces. Miss, your mother is waiting? You straighten your spine as much as the corset will allow, lift your chin and prepare to enter the battlefield of Victorian propriety. Just getting dressed has been a near-death experience, and your day has only just begun. One moment, Martha, you say, pausing at the door. I feel a bit faint. "Oh, that's perfectly normal, miss," Martha says cheerfully. "The ladies' magazines say a delicate constitution is most becoming. Lady Harrington's daughter fainted 3 times at the winter's ball. Most elegant, everyone said." You stare at her in disbelief. Fainting, a literal medical emergency caused by lack of oxygen to the brain, is considered attractive, but of course it is. A woman so fragile, so delicate, so thoroughly feminine that she can't even remain conscious. What could be more appealing to Victorian sensibilities? Wait until you hear what happens at breakfast. If you thought the morning routine was rough, you're in for a wild ride when you meet the family. Spoiler alert, you might be getting married off by lunchtime. As you make your way down the narrow staircase, careful not to trip on your crinoline or catch your sleeves on anything, you can't help but think about how your modern morning routine, rolling out of bed, throwing on some clothes, maybe brushing your teeth if you're feeling fancy, doesn't seem so bad now. In Victorian England, beauty isn't just pain, it's slow suicide, and you've still got the rest of the day to survive. You somehow manage to make it down the stairs without tumbling to your death, which feels like a genuine accomplishment. The crinoline cage under your skirts makes navigating narrow spaces a geometry puzzle from hell. If you're not careful, you'll knock over that priceless-looking vase or tear the wallpaper with your steel hoops. Speaking of that wallpaper, more of that arsenic green everywhere. The Victorians were basically living inside poison containers and calling it fashion. Margaret, there you are. We've been waiting for 15 minutes. A stern-faced woman sits at the head of a long dining table. Your mother, apparently. She looks like she's been sucking on lemons her whole life, face pinched with permanent disapproval. Next to her sits an older man. Your father, hidden behind a newspaper. 2 younger girls, who must be your sisters, sit with perfect posture, not daring to touch the food in front of them. "I apologise, Mother," you hear yourself say. "My toilette took longer than expected. A lady should rise early enough to account for her preparations," Mother sniffs. "Lady Pembroke's daughters are always punctual." Lady Pembroke again. "Apparently, her daughters are the Victorian equivalent of the neighbour's kid who got into Harvard. You'll be hearing about them all day." You take your seat and a maid, not Martha, a different one, immediately places a teacup in front of you. The family eats in silence. You notice your portion is tiny compared to your father's plate, which is piled with eggs, sausages and toast. You have a single poached egg, half a piece of dry toast and tea. No wonder Victorian women were always fainting. They were literally starving. "Margaret," your mother says suddenly, "the Blackwoods have invited us to dine tomorrow evening. Their son Edward will be present." You nearly choke on your toast. You know exactly what this means. The Victorians didn't have dating apps. They had awkward family dinners where young people were paraded in front of each other like prize cattle at an auction, and Edward Blackwood is apparently a prime specimen your mother has her eye on. "He's recently inherited his uncle's shipping business," she continues, "quite a substantial fortune, and only 26. Ah, there it is. Money. In Victorian England, marriage wasn't about love. It was a business transaction, a merger of families, finances, and social status. And you, as a young woman, are the commodity being traded. You'll wear the blue silk with the lace trim, your mother decides, and mind your conversation. Last time you spoke at length about that book. Most unbecoming. God forbid a woman show intelligence or independent thought. Men might find it threatening. Your father grunts from behind his newspaper, apparently the extent of his contribution to the conversation. After breakfast comes the real work of your day. As a middle-class Victorian woman, your entire existence revolves around the home. Your father makes the money, but you and your mother manage it, transforming income into comfort, status, and respectability through your domestic skills. "We must review the menus for the week," your mother announces, leading you to a small writing desk in the morning room. Mrs. Parker has requested additional funds for the kitchen, which is most irregular. Mrs. Parker is apparently the cook, and you soon discover that household management is essentially running a small business. Every penny is accounted for, every purchase justified. The Victorian middle-class lifestyle required constant vigilance against the twin terrors of debt and social embarrassment. The butcher has raised his prices again, your mother says with disapproval. We shall have to reduce our meat consumption to 3 days a week. You learn that your father's income is respectable but not lavish, keeping up appearances, maintaining the right address, the right clothes, the right social connections, stretches the family finances to breaking point. One misstep, one financial disaster, and you could tumble down the social ladder into the working class, and that would be a fate worse than death in Victorian England. Now, Margaret, you will take inventory of the linens today. The laundry comes back tomorrow, and I won't have them cheating us again. Counting sheets and tablecloths sounds boring but harmless enough. Little do you know what Victorian laundry actually involves. You head to the linen closet, a small room packed with neatly folded white fabrics. Everything in a Victorian household that can be white is white, a visual symbol of cleanliness and moral purity. But keeping things white in 19th century London, with its coal smoke and general filth, is basically impossible, which is why laundry is both constant and brutal. As you count pillowcases, your mind drifts to what's happening in the scullery right now. The laundry maid, probably no more than 14 years old, is literally boiling enormous copper vats of water, adding lye soap that burns her hands raw, and stirring clothes with a wooden paddle because touching the scalding water directly would strip her skin off. She'll spend hours scrubbing, wringing and hanging, destroying her body in the process. Laundry maids had the shortest lifespans of almost any domestic servant, their lungs damaged by steam and chemicals, their hands permanently disfigured from harsh soaps and hot water. And that's just for everyday linens. Your monthly blood cloths are a whole other nightmare. Disposable menstrual products don't exist yet. You use and reuse cotton rags, which someone, probably poor Martha, has to clean. No one talks about it. It's shameful, hidden, despite being something literally half the population experiences. Your inspection complete, you return to your mother, who's now in the drawing room with a visitor, Mrs. Harrington, mother of the infamous 18.5-inch waist girl. Margaret, pour the tea, your mother commands. Not a request, an order. Tea service is an art form in Victorian England, and you're expected to be a master. The china must be arranged just so. The tea steeped exactly 3 minutes. The milk poured to precisely the right level. It's like a chemical experiment where failure means social death. Your hands shake slightly as you lift the heavy silver teapot. One drop spilled on the lace tablecloth would be catastrophic. You've seen maids dismissed for less. I was just telling your mother about poor Mrs. Wilkinson, Mrs. Harrington says as you serve her. Lost her 3rd child last week. The fever again? How dreadful, your mother murmurs. They discuss infant death with the casual air of talking about the weather. In Victorian England, child mortality is so common it's barely remarkable. 1 in 5 children won't make it to their 5th birthday. Disease rips through families like wildfire. Measles, scarlet fever, diphtheria, whooping cough, all potentially fatal in an age before antibiotics and vaccines. And it strikes everywhere, even in wealthy households with access to doctors. Disease is democratic that way. Speaking of children, Mrs. Harrington continues, eyeing you. Any prospects for Margaret? She must be 20 now? 20, practically on the shelf by Victorian standards. Many of your peers are already married with multiple children. Some are already widows. The Blackwoods have shown interest, your mother says, and you feel yourself being discussed like livestock again. We dine with them tomorrow. Excellent match, Mrs. Harrington nods approvingly, though I hear the elder Blackwood boy had some trouble at university, gambling, I believe. And just like that, you learn that your potential husband might have a gambling problem. But does it matter? Not really. Your opinion on who you marry carries about as much weight as the family dogs. After Mrs. Harrington leaves, your mother gives you your next assignment, needlework, because of course. Your sister's wedding handkerchiefs must be finished by Friday, she says, handing you a basket of pristine white linen and impossibly fine thread. You sit by the window for better light and begin the mind-numbing process of creating tiny, perfect stitches. One mistake and you'll have to start over. The work is literally making you go blind. Victorian women commonly developed serious eye problems from hours of detailed needlework in poor light. But it's not just a hobby, it's a demonstration of virtue, patience, and feminine accomplishment. A woman's needlework showcases her value as a potential wife. Can she create beautiful things? Does she have the patience for tedious work? Will she sit quietly for hours without complaint? These are the qualities that matter in a Victorian wife. As you stab the needle through fabric for the 1,000th time, you notice movement in the street below. A woman in a plain dress hurries past, head down, a working woman, someone with actual purpose beyond decorative existence. For a moment, you envy her, despite knowing her life is probably harder than yours in material ways. At least she might get to choose her own husband. Working-class women often married for love, or at least compatibility. The price of your privilege is your freedom. Lunch comes and goes, another barely there meal that keeps your waist appropriately tiny, and then you have your one escape of the day, a supervised walk in the park. Margaret, your gloves and hat, Martha reminds you as you prepare to leave. Going outside with bare hands or an uncovered head would be as shocking as walking down the street naked in your time. Your mother accompanies you, along with your younger sisters. The park is where the middle and upper classes go to see and be seen. It's not about enjoying nature, it's about performing your social status in public. Stand straight, Charlotte, your mother hisses at your youngest sister. Mrs. Farthington is watching. Everyone is always watching. Every movement is judged. Are you walking too quickly, too boldly? Is your parasol held at the proper angle? Victorian society is a theatre, and you're always on stage. You pass a group of young men who tip their hats politely. One catches your eye and smiles. Your mother notices immediately. "Margaret," she whispers sharply. Eyes down. A lady never makes eye contact with strange gentlemen. Even your gaze belongs to your future husband. Looking at another man could start rumours that would destroy your reputation, and a woman's reputation is her only currency in this world. The walk ends, and you return home for the most dreaded part of your day, household inspection. "We shall begin in the kitchen," your mother announces. The kitchen is the heart of a Victorian home, and keeping it running is a science. The cook, Mrs. Parker, a formidable woman with forearms like a blacksmith, curtsies as you enter. "Menu for tonight, Mrs. Parker?" your mother demands. "Roast chicken, ma'am, with carrots and potatoes. Apple tart for dessert." Your mother sniffs the air suspiciously, looking for any sign of waste or impropriety. The Victorians were obsessed with food adulteration, and for good reason. Food fraud was rampant, milk watered down, flour bulked up with chalk, tea mixed with used leaves and random plants. Even bread could contain sawdust, or worse. As the lady of the house, in training, you're expected to detect these frauds, to protect your family from poison masquerading as food. It's literally life or death. Your mother runs a finger along a shelf, checking for dust. Finds none, thankfully. Mrs. Parker knows her job. Not all servants are so competent. The coal usage seems excessive, your mother notes, examining the logbook where every scuttle of coal is recorded. "See that it's reduced." Mrs. Parker's face tightens, but she nods. Reducing coal means colder cooking conditions and longer hours for her. But that's not your mother's concern. Running an efficient household is. The inspection continues room by room, every corner examined, every penny accounted for. This is what Victorian women did. Instead of having careers, they became domestic CEOs, managing complex households with military precision. By late afternoon, you're exhausted. Your ribs ache from the corset, your eyes strain from needlework, your head pounds from the constant vigilance required to navigate Victorian propriety. But the day isn't over. There's dinner to prepare for, which means another outfit change, because heaven forbid you wear the same dress all day. Martha helps you out of your day dress and into an evening gown, slightly more formal, with a lower neckline but still entirely modest by modern standards. The corset stays on, of course. It always stays on. "Your hair, miss," Martha says, attacking your head with brushes and pins. The elaborate updo she creates looks like it defies physics. It also gives you an instant headache as your hair pulls at your scalp. Dinner is a formal affair, even though it's just family tonight. Your father sits at the head of the table, serving the meat. Multiple courses are served, despite there being only 5 of you. The dishes are deliberately excessive, another display of status and wealth. You notice your father and brother are served wine, while you, your mother and sisters get watered-down ratafia, a weak fruit cordial. Alcohol is mainly for men. Women drinking anything stronger than diluted wine is scandalous. The conversation revolves around your father's work and your brother's university studies. The women are expected to listen appreciatively, asking just enough questions to show interest without challenging the men's knowledge. After dinner, the real gender divide happens. Your father and brother retreat to the study for brandy and cigars. The women withdraw to the drawing room for more needlework. Shocking. Your stitches are uneven on the left side, your mother critiques, examining your day's work. Unpick it and start again. Hours of work destroyed in a second, but you don't argue. You never argue. Victorian daughters are seen and not heard, their needs and desires secondary to the family's reputation and the men's comfort. As the evening wears on, you're permitted one small pleasure: playing the piano forte. Not because you enjoy it, but because musical accomplishment makes you more marriageable. Your fingers move mechanically over the keys, playing a pleasant but unmemorable tune. Much improved, your mother nods. The closest thing to praise you'll get. By 9 o'clock, exhaustion sets in. The day's constant performance, physically, socially, domestically, has drained you. But there's one more ritual before bed: family prayers. Your father reads from the Bible, droning on about women's submission and obedience. The irony isn't lost on you. Men control the religion that controls the women. Finally, you're allowed to retreat to your bedroom. Martha helps you undress, unlacing the corset that's been crushing your organs all day. The relief is immediate and overwhelming. Your body practically sighs as it expands to its natural shape. But the day's final indignity awaits: your beauty regimen. Because simply surviving a Victorian day isn't enough. You need to prepare for tomorrow's performance too. Martha brings a small pot of white cream. "Your cold cream, miss." Cold cream, a mixture of water, beeswax and various oils, is used to remove the day's layer of face powder. It's one of the few actually harmless beauty products in your arsenal. As Martha wipes away the powder, you catch sight of your natural face in the mirror. Pale from lack of sun, slightly gaunt from restricted food, with dark circles under your eyes from chronic exhaustion and possibly low-level arsenic poisoning. This is the true face of Victorian beauty standards. Slow deterioration masked by powder and poison. Martha brushes your hair, another 100 strokes, and helps you into a nightgown and cap. The room is cold, the fire having died down hours ago. The sheets feel damp from London's perpetual humidity. "Will there be anything else, miss?" Martha asks. You shake your head and she curtsies before leaving. Now, finally alone, you can drop the performance, the perfect posture, the perpetual slight smile, the constant awareness of being watched and judged. You sink into the lumpy mattress, your body aching in places you didn't know could ache. Your day as a Victorian woman has been exhausting in ways you never imagined, not from physical labour, though the corset is its own form of torture, but from the constant, unrelenting performance of femininity, every movement calculated, every word measured, every moment a test of your worth as a woman, a daughter, a potential wife. And tomorrow, you get to do it all again. Plus, you have the dinner with Edward Blackwood to look forward to, the man who might own you next, after your father is done with you. As you drift towards sleep, you wonder about the women who actually lived this life. Not for a day, but for decades. Women who knew nothing else, who couldn't imagine the freedoms you take for granted. Did they feel the same suffocation, the same sense of being trapped in a beautiful cage, or did they find power in the narrow spaces they were permitted to control, the household, the social calendar, the domestic realm? You'll never know. But as sleep claims you, one thing is certain. Surviving as a Victorian woman required a strength modern people can barely comprehend. A different kind of strength than we celebrate today. Not independence or self-actualization, but endurance. The ability to bear constriction, limitation, and pain without complaint. Tomorrow brings a new challenge, navigating Victorian society beyond the home. The streets of London await with their own dangers and restrictions for a woman of your station. That's if you survive another night in this arsenic green bedroom, of course. You wake up still in 1860. Damn, part of you hoped this was just a particularly vivid nightmare brought on by binge-watching too many period dramas. But no, the lumpy mattress, the arsenic wallpaper, and Martha's anxious face hovering over you confirm that you're still trapped in Victorian England. "Good morning, miss," Martha says, already pulling back the curtains to reveal another grey London day. "Your mother says you're to accompany her to the shops this morning." Shopping. That sounds almost normal, maybe even fun. Oh, you sweet summer child. Victorian shopping is nothing like the retail therapy you're used to. The morning routine repeats. The pathetic sponge bath, the poisonous beauty regimen, the organ-crushing corset. But today Martha adds an extra layer of petticoats beneath your walking dress. "The streets are particularly foul today, miss," she explains. "The extra layer will keep the mud from soaking through." You're about to discover that particularly foul is the understatement of the century. After another bird-sized breakfast, you and your mother prepare to venture out. The process involves more equipment than a modern camping trip. Parasols to prevent tanning, gloves to prevent touching things, small bottles of smelling salts in case of fainting, calling cards for social visits, a small purse with exactly enough money for your planned purchases. Women carrying too much money is unseemly. And a heavy cloak despite it not being particularly cold. "Remember, Margaret," your mother says as Martha helps you with your outdoor garments, "we are going to Bond Street for ribbons, then to the stationer for your father's order, and then to pay our respects to Mrs. Pembroke, who is unwell. We shall be home by 2 o'clock precisely for luncheon." Every minute of your day is scheduled and monitored. Spontaneity doesn't exist in Victorian women's lives. You step out the front door and immediately want to retreat back inside. The streets of 1860s London are a sensory assault unlike anything you've ever experienced. First, the smell. Dear God. the smell. Raw sewage runs in open gutters along the streets. Horse manure is everywhere, each horse producing 20-30 pounds of it daily, and there are thousands of horses in London. Add to that the coal smoke, the rotting food, the unwashed bodies, and the stench of the nearby Thames River, essentially an open sewer, and you've got a cocktail of odours that makes your eyes water. "Keep your handkerchief ready," your mother murmurs, pressing a scented cloth to her own nose. The handkerchief is doused in lavender water, a pitiful defence against the metropolitan miasma. Then there's the noise. Horse hooves and iron-rimmed carriage wheels on cobblestones create a deafening cacophony. Street vendors shout their wares, children scream, dogs bark. It's chaos. But the most immediate challenge is the ground beneath your feet. The hem of your dress drags through sewage and horse manure, collecting diseases with every step. Your shoes, dainty leather boots with almost no traction, slip on the slick, filthy cobblestones. One wrong step, and you'll not only fall into literal shit, but you'll also cause a social catastrophe by displaying an ankle, or, God forbid, a bit of calf. "Mind your skirts, Margaret," your mother hisses as you nearly step in something unspeakable, and do not make eye contact with anyone. That last part is harder than it sounds. The streets are teeming with humanity of all sorts, gentlemen in top hats, working men in caps, women of your class with downcast eyes, servants rushing on errands, street children with no shoes despite the cold. And prostitutes. You recognise them immediately by their direct gazes and slightly more colourful dresses. Some look as young as 13. Many are visibly ill. Victorian London has an estimated 80,000 sex workers, women with few other options for survival. They're simultaneously used by men and condemned by society. Your mother steers you well clear of them, as if poverty and desperation might be contagious. A carriage rushes past, spraying dirty water from a puddle. You jump back just in time, but a working-class woman walking nearby gets soaked. The carriage doesn't stop. The woman doesn't protest. This is just how it is. The poor are invisible obstacles to be avoided or ignored. You finally reach Bond Street, where the shops cater to the upper and middle classes. Here at least the streets are marginally cleaner. Your mother leads you into a small shop filled with ribbons, lace, and other decorative trim. "Good morning, Mrs. Harrison," the shopkeeper says with a bow. "How may I assist you today?" Shopping in Victorian times is a personal affair, no browsing aimlessly. You state what you want, and the shopkeeper brings items for your inspection. Your mother requests blue ribbons to match your evening gown for the Blackwood dinner, while the shopkeeper fetches options. You notice another young woman enter the shop with her mother. You recognise her immediately, Sophia Pembroke, daughter of the sainted Lady Pembroke, whose children are apparently perfect in every way. Your mother notices too and immediately adjusts her posture. "Mrs. Pembroke, what a pleasure. We were planning to call on you this morning. How is your health?" "Tolerable, thank you," Mrs. Pembroke replies. She looks perfectly healthy to you, but Victorian women of means are almost professionally unwell. Chronic, vague illness is a status symbol, proof you're delicate and don't need to work. "Sophia, you remember Mrs. Harrison's daughter, Margaret." Sophia offers you a practised smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "Of course. How lovely to see you, Margaret. I heard you'll be dining with the Blackwoods tomorrow. Edward is such a charming gentleman." There's something in her tone that makes your stomach clench. Does she know something about Edward Blackwood that you don't? "We look forward to it," your mother answers for you, because heaven forbid you speak for yourself. Margaret has a new blue silk for the occasion. The two mothers continue comparing their daughters like prized livestock, while you and Sophia stand in uncomfortable silence. You're supposed to be rivals in the marriage market after all. Friends are secondary to finding a husband. The shopkeeper returns with ribbon samples, and suddenly everyone has opinions on which shade of blue best complements your complexion. This mundane decision is treated with the gravity of international diplomacy because in Victorian England, appearances aren't just important, they're everything. With ribbons purchased, the most expensive option naturally, despite your family's budget constraints, you move on to the stationer's shop. Your father has ordered new visiting cards, a necessity in Victorian social life. Without them, you basically don't exist. As you walk, you pass a group of street children selling matches. They're filthy, skeletal thin, with hollow eyes that have seen too much. One, a girl no more than 6, approaches you. "Penny for matches, miss. Please, miss." Before you can respond, your mother shoos the child away like an annoying insect. "Move along, we've nothing for you." The desperate poverty hits you like a physical blow. In your time, you might have given the child money or at least acknowledged her humanity. Here, the class divide is an unbridgeable chasm. The child is as foreign to your Victorian life as a Martian would be. "Don't encourage them," your mother says, noticing your distress. "They're likely sent by pickpockets to distract us." Some are, it's true, but most are just hungry children trying to survive. Victorian London is particularly cruel to the young and vulnerable. Thousands of children live on the streets or in workhouses that are barely distinguishable from prisons. At the stationers, you encounter yet another aspect of Victorian public life, the different worlds men and women inhabit. While your mother discusses the visiting cards, a gentleman enters and immediately commands the shopkeeper's attention, despite having arrived after you. Your mother doesn't protest, neither does any other woman in the shop. Men come first, always. The gentleman completes his business and leaves without acknowledging any of the waiting women. This isn't considered rude, it's just how things are. Men and women operate in separate spheres with different rules, and men's needs and time are inherently more valuable. Cards collected, you head toward the Pembroke residence for your social call. On the way, you pass a group of women marching with signs. Votes for women and property rights for married women. Suffragists, early feminists fighting for basic rights. Your mother hurries you past them. "Disgraceful display," she mutters. "No respectable woman would participate in such vulgar exhibitions." The suffragist movement is gaining momentum in 1860s London, but it's still considered radical and unladylike. Most respectable women, like your mother, oppose it. They've internalised the very system that oppresses them. The Pembroke house is grand, grander than yours, which your mother notes with barely concealed envy. You're shown into a formal sitting room where Lady Pembroke reclines on a chaise lounge, looking dramatically ill despite her suspiciously healthy complexion. "My dear Mrs. Harrison, how good of you to call," she says weakly. "My nerves have been simply dreadful this week." Nervous complaints are the Victorian woman's acceptable outlet for any emotional or psychological distress. Depression, anxiety, frustration with their limited lives all get lumped under nerves or hysteria. The treatments range from useless to actively harmful. Bed rest, avoidance of stimulation, including reading or thinking too much, and sometimes even surgical intervention for severe cases. You sit stiffly on an uncomfortable chair while the women exchange gossip thinly disguised as concern. "Did you hear about young Miss Taylor?" Lady Pembroke asks, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "Seen walking in the park with Mr. Foster, alone." The women gasp as if she'd announced Miss Taylor was found dancing naked in Trafalgar Square. Being alone with a man, even briefly, can destroy a woman's reputation, and a woman's reputation is her only currency. Her prospects are ruined, of course, Lady Pembroke continues with poorly concealed satisfaction. No decent family will receive her now. One walk, one minor breach of the suffocating social code, and a young woman's life is effectively over. She'll never make a good match now. The unfairness of it makes you want to scream, but your Victorian body remains perfectly composed, nodding along with appropriate dismay. After an appropriate 15 minutes, social calls are precisely timed, never too short, rude, or too long, imposing. You and your mother take your leave. Lady Pembroke presents Sophia as a model of feminine virtue, while you stand there imagining what it would be like to set the whole ridiculous system on fire. On the walk home, another aspect of Victorian street life becomes apparent. Street harassment. A group of gentlemen loiter outside a club, smoking cigars and watching women pass by. Despite your modest dress and downcast eyes, they make comments just loud enough for you to hear. Lovely figure on that one. Bet she's a lively filly in private. Your mother pretends not to hear, picking up her pace slightly. As a respectable woman, you have no defence against this behaviour. Acknowledging it would be improper, challenging it unthinkable. All eyes evaluate your every move. How you walk, hold your parasol, acknowledge greetings, men assess your physical attributes, women judge your adherence to social codes, servants note your class markers. There is no privacy in public, no moment when you aren't performing your gender and class for an audience. The constant surveillance is exhausting. The mental checklist never ends. Keep your back straight, eyes modestly down, skirts clear of filth, parasol at the correct angle. Don't walk too quickly, unladylike, or too slowly. Causes congestion. Don't attract attention. Don't fade into the background either, or your marriage prospects suffer. As you navigate these impossible standards, you pass a familiar figure, the match girl from earlier. She's huddled in a doorway now, no longer actively selling. She looks unwell, her small face flushed. You recognize the symptoms from your modern knowledge. Phossy jaw, a horrific occupational disease caused by the white phosphorus used in matchmaking. Her jawbone is literally decaying inside her face. The desperate woman begging with her children is invisible to the passing carriages. The wealthy avert their eyes. The slightly less wealthy hurry past, afraid of falling into the same circumstances. The poor help when they can, sharing what little they have, but it's never enough. Victorian charity exists, but it's often performative and judgmental, more about making the giver feel virtuous than actually helping. The suffering of the poor is seen as either divinely ordained or the result of moral failings, not as a systemic issue requiring structural change. You arrive home just before 2 o'clock, right on schedule. Martha helps remove your outdoor things, tisking at the state of your hem. Dreadful weather, miss. I'll have this cleaned straight away. You realise that your brief outing has created hours of extra work for Martha, washing and pressing your soiled garments, cleaning your muddy boots, preparing fresh accessories for your next excursion. The Victorian lifestyle requires an army of invisible workers to maintain. Luncheon is served precisely at 2. Again, your portion is tiny compared to your brother's, who has joined you today. He dominates the conversation with tales of his university friends and professors. No one expects you to contribute anything but appreciative nods. After lunch, your mother announces, "We have calls to make this afternoon." More social visits, more performative femininity, more rigid rules to follow. But these visits serve a purpose beyond mere socialising. They're intelligence-gathering missions. Through these carefully choreographed interactions, your mother collects information vital to your family's social survival. Who's rising in society? Who's falling? Which families have marriageable sons? Which young women are your competition? The afternoon proceeds much like the morning, but with deteriorating weather. The infamous London fog grows thicker, taking on a yellowish hue from coal smoke. It burns your lungs and makes your eyes water. People around you cough constantly. Victorian London's air quality regularly killed people through respiratory diseases. By the time you return home for tea, you're physically and mentally exhausted. Your feet ache from walking on uneven cobblestones in impractical boots. Your head pounds from the constant vigilance required to navigate public spaces as a woman. Your lungs burn from the polluted air. Yet, you've accomplished nothing of substance. You haven't learned anything, created anything, helped anyone, or even enjoyed yourself. You've simply existed in public in the approved manner for your gender and class. Tea is another performance. Pouring correctly, sitting properly, making appropriate small talk. The monotony is broken only when your father arrives home early, bringing unexpected news. "I encountered Edward Blackwood at my club today," he announces. "Fine young man, very keen to make your acquaintance, Margaret." Your mother practically vibrates with excitement. "Did he mention the dinner tomorrow?" "Indeed," seemed quite eager for it. Your father gives you an appraising look. "You'll make a good impression, I trust." It's not really a question. Failure isn't an option. Your entire worth as a daughter hinges on your ability to attract a suitable husband. It doesn't matter if Edward Blackwood is kind or cruel, intelligent or dull, compatible with you or completely at odds. What matters is his income, his social standing, and his willingness to take you off your parents' hands. "Yes, father," you hear yourself say. "Good girl." He nods, returning to his newspaper, already dismissing you from his thoughts. After tea, you're granted a rare hour of leisure before dinner preparations begin. Your mother suggests you practice piano, another marriageable skill, but your Victorian self has a small rebellion in mind. "I thought I might read, Mother, just for a short while." Your mother frowns, but allows it. Nothing too stimulating. Dr. Richardson says excessive reading overexcites the female mind. You retreat to a small alcove with a book, a bland novel deemed suitable for young ladies. Nothing that might introduce dangerous ideas like independence or equality. Even fictional women who step outside their prescribed roles are inevitably punished with death or social ruin by the final chapter. As you pretend to read, your mind drifts to the day's experiences, the stark contrasts between rich and poor, the elaborate performances required of women, the suffocating social codes that keep everyone in their assigned place. You wonder how real Victorian women survived this, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. How did they endure lives so circumscribed, so limited, so constantly judged? Did they secretly rage against their gilded cages, or did they simply not know any other possibility existed? The hour passes too quickly, and it's time to prepare for dinner. Another dress, another performance, another step toward your predetermined fate as Edward Blackwood's wife, or someone like him. As Martha helps you change, you catch sight of yourself in the mirror. Your face is pale from the toxic beauty regimen, your waist unnaturally tiny from the corset, your posture perfect from years of training and social pressure. You look exactly as a Victorian woman should. Pretty, delicate, decorative, constrained, and inside you're screaming. The next day arrives with a sense of dread. Today is the dinner with Edward Blackwood, the man your parents have decided might be your future husband, the man who will legally own you if you marry. "We must make you absolutely perfect tonight," your mother declares as Martha helps you dress for breakfast. "The Blackwoods are an excellent family, better than we could have hoped for, frankly." Thanks, Mother. Nothing like starting the day with a reminder of your family's precarious social standing. After breakfast, the house erupts into a flurry of activity. The best china is brought out and inspected for chips. The silver is polished again, despite being done last week. The menu is reviewed obsessively, not too ostentatious, suggests trying too hard, but impressive enough to demonstrate your family's status. Or, Margaret, you will practice your piano for 2 hours this morning, your mother instructs. Mr. Blackwood is known to appreciate music. Great. 2 hours of mindless scales and simple, acceptable pieces. Nothing too complex or passionate. That might suggest an unbecoming intensity of emotion. Victorian men want wives who are accomplished enough to entertain guests, but not so talented they might outshine their husbands. The day crawls by in anxious preparation. By late afternoon, you're being laced into your best corset, tighter than usual despite your already difficulty breathing. We must get you to 18 inches tonight, your mother insists, as Martha pulls the laces. The blue silk won't sit properly otherwise. The pain is immediate and breath-stealing. Your ribs compress, your organs shift. Black spots dance before your eyes. I can't breathe, you gasp. Oh, nonsense. Mrs. Pembroke told me her Sophia wears her corset to 17 inches for special occasions. Surely you can manage 18. You'd argue further, but you literally don't have the oxygen to form words. Martha gives you an apologetic look as she ties off the laces. The blue silk dress goes on next, your best gown, saved for important occasions. It's beautiful, with delicate lace trim and tiny pearl buttons. It's also incredibly heavy and restrictive, designed to showcase your artificially tiny waist and modest demeanour. Your hair is tortured into an elaborate updo, secured with so many pins your scalp screams in protest. Minimal makeup, just enough rice powder to appear fashionably pale and a touch of rouge subtly applied so it doesn't look like makeup at all. By the time the Blackwoods carriage arrives, you're a perfect Victorian vision and in perfect Victorian agony. Remember, your mother hisses as you prepare to greet the guests. Speak only when spoken to. Laugh at Mr. Blackwood's jokes, but not too loudly. Show interest in his conversation, but don't appear too knowledgeable. And for heaven's sake, maintain your posture. The Blackwoods enter, Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood, their daughter Florence, and the man himself, Edward, your potential husband. Your first impression is relief. He's not hideously old or visibly deformed, maybe 30, reasonably handsome in a bland sort of way, well-dressed without being flashy. Your second impression is less comforting. His eyes, cold, assessing, like he's checking a horse's teeth before purchase. Miss Harrison, he says, bowing slightly. A pleasure to make your acquaintance at last. I've heard much about you. You curtsy, murmuring an appropriate greeting. The formal dance of Victorian courtship has begun. Dinner is an elaborate affair. Soup, fish, meat, vegetables, pudding, fruit, cheese, all served with precise timing by your household staff, who've been drilled within an inch of their lives for this performance. You're seated beside Edward, as custom dictates. The conversation is painfully stilted, with your father and Mr. Blackwood discussing business, politics, and other male topics, while the women offer occasional supportive comments. I understand you play the pianoforte, Miss Harrison, Edward says during a lull. Yes, Mr. Blackwood, though I fear I play rather poorly. This is the expected response. Even if you were a virtuoso, Victorian modesty requires you to downplay your abilities. Perhaps you might favour us with a piece after dinner. It's not really a request. You smile and nod, already dreading the performance. And do you read, Miss Harrison? He continues, a dangerous question. Reading the wrong books suggests an independent mind, a quality Victorian men definitely don't want in a wife. Only what my mother approves, sir. I find improving literature most rewarding. translation. I only read boring moral tales that reinforce traditional values, nothing that might give me ideas above my station. He seems satisfied with this answer. Excellent. Too many young women these days fill their heads with romantic nonsense. A practical mind is much more valuable in a wife. The word wife hangs in the air between you. He's not exactly being subtle about his intentions. Throughout dinner, you notice Edward drinks heavily, 4 glasses of wine plus brandy afterward. A warning sign, perhaps, but Victorian women have no right to object to male vices. That's just part of being a man. After dinner, the women withdraw to the drawing room, while the men remain for cigars and more alcohol. Another rigid gender separation. In the drawing room, Mrs. Blackwood interrogates you thinly disguised as pleasant conversation. "Do you enjoy household management, Miss Harrison? Florence tells me you keep an excellent linen inventory. Thrilling. Your skill with counting sheets has been noted. I find great satisfaction in maintaining an orderly household, ma'am. More acceptable lies. The stakes are too high for honesty." When the men eventually join you, Edward immediately requests your musical performance. You take your place at the piano, corset digging into your ribs, making each breath a shallow gasp. The piece you play is pretty but simple, demonstrating just enough skill to be accomplished without threatening male egos. Edward watches you with that same calculating gaze. You're not a person to him. You're a potential possession, a decorative asset, a womb for his future heirs, a symbol of his status. After your performance, he approaches. "You play charmingly, Miss Harrison." "You're too kind, sir." "Not at all. A touch of music makes a house a home, don't you agree? My mother always played in the evenings for my father." The subtext is clear. This is what I expect from a wife. The evening continues with cards and tea, more stilted conversation, more subtle evaluation. Edward seems particularly interested in your family connections and your mother's health, calculating your social value and how long before you might inherit anything. When the Blackwoods finally depart, Edward takes your hand. His grip is slightly too tight, his thumb brushing across your knuckles in a way that makes your skin crawl. "I've greatly enjoyed this evening, Miss Harrison. I hope to see more of you. With a single signature, you legally cease to exist as your own person. Your body, your property, your earnings all belong to your husband. That's the reality waiting if Edward Blackwood proposes." And based on your parents' excited whispers after the Blackwoods leave, that's exactly what they're hoping for. "He seemed quite taken with you," your mother says as Martha helps you undress. Mrs. Blackwood hinted he's been looking to settle down. His house on Grosvenor Square needs a mistress. The corset comes off and you gasp as blood flow returns to your compressed torso. Red marks from the stays will take hours to fade. "Did you notice how he asked about your musical education? A clear sign of interest," your mother continues, oblivious to your discomfort, "and inquiring about your reading habits. Very promising. You say nothing. What can you say? That Edward Blackwood's eyes made you feel like merchandise, that his touch made your skin crawl, that the thought of being legally bound to him makes you want to run screaming into the night. Victorian daughters don't get to choose based on such trivial matters as personal comfort or compatibility. They accept the matches their parents arrange. They smile and say yes and surrender their entire existence to men who see them as property. Lying in bed that night, you think about what marriage to Edward Blackwood would mean. Your modern brain understands the legal reality in ways your Victorian counterpart can't fully grasp. Under the doctrine of coverture, a married woman in 1860 England has no legal existence. Her husband absorbs her legal personhood completely. She cannot own property, cannot keep her own wages if she works, cannot make contracts, cannot sue or be sued, cannot even refuse her husband's sexual demands. Marital rape won't be recognized as a crime for another century. The bedroom door closes and you realize you have no right to refuse anything. If Edward gambles away your family money, you have no recourse. If he takes a mistress, you must pretend not to notice. If he beats you, the law offers little protection unless he causes permanent injury. And even then, the scandal would likely be considered worse than the abuse. The bruises hidden beneath layers of clothing tell the story society refuses to hear. Of course, not all Victorian marriages were nightmares. Some men treated their wives with genuine respect and affection despite the legal imbalance, but you have no way of knowing if Edward Blackwood would be such a husband. The courtship process is designed to reveal as little as possible about his true character. A week passes with several more carefully chaperoned interactions with Edward. A walk in the park with your mother 3 steps behind, tea at his family's home with Mrs. Blackwood watching like a hawk, a musical evening where you play the piano while he turns the pages, standing close enough that you can smell the brandy on his breath at 4 in the afternoon. Then it happens. Edward calls on your father at his club, not to see you, but to ask permission to propose, because you're not even involved in this most basic decision about your own life. Your father, of course, agrees enthusiastically. Edward Blackwood is a good match financially and socially. What more could matter? The proposal itself is painfully formal. Edward arrives at your home, asks to speak with you privately, with the drawing room door left open, and your mother hovering nearby, of course. He makes a stiff little speech about admiring your qualities and believing you would make a suitable wife. Not one word about love, not one word about happiness, just suitability. You know what your answer must be. In Victorian England, refusing a suitable proposal without an excellent reason would bring shame on your family. It could damage your reputation, making other potential suitors think something must be wrong with you. At 20, you're already pushing the boundaries of marriageable age. Your options are limited. Yes, Mr. Blackwood, I would be honoured. His smile doesn't reach his eyes. He takes your hand, places a perfunctory kiss on your knuckles, then immediately goes to share the news with your parents. You're left alone, engaged to a virtual stranger who now has the legal right to control every aspect of your existence. The weeks that follow are a whirlwind of wedding preparations. The date is set for just 2 months away, a relatively long engagement by Victorian standards. Some couples marry within weeks of meeting. Your trousseau is assembled, the clothes, linens and personal items you'll take to your new home. Your mother scrutinizes every stitch, every hem, every button. These items reflect on your family, after all. You're measured for your wedding dress, white, because Queen Victoria popularized the trend, though it's not yet universal. The corset for your wedding day arrives specially made. It's designed to achieve a 17-inch waist. When you try it on, you actually do faint. Just nerves, your mother dismisses when you regain consciousness. All brides get jittery. Marriage contracts are drawn up. Your father's lawyer and Edward's lawyer negotiate the details of your dowry, the money and goods that effectively serve as your purchase price. None of this involves you directly. You're just the commodity being transferred. With a single signature, you legally cease to exist as your own person. The wedding preparations continue relentlessly, but there's a new undercurrent in the household. Your mother has begun your preparation for married life. These awkward, veiled conversations dance around the topic of marital duties without ever mentioning sex directly. A wife must be accommodating to her husband's needs, she says stiffly one afternoon while supervising your embroidery. It may seem strange at first, but it is your duty before God. Translation: you'll be expected to submit to sex whether you want it or not. The physical aspect of marriage can be trying for refined women, she continues, staring fixedly at the wall above your head, but one endures for the blessing of children. Translation: you're not supposed to enjoy it. Just lie back and think of England. Mr. Blackwood seems a gentleman. I'm sure he will be considerate. Translation: maybe he won't hurt you too badly. These non-conversations leave you more terrified than informed. Victorian women are deliberately kept ignorant about their own bodies, about sex, about pregnancy and childbirth. Many go to their wedding nights having no idea what will happen. The results are often traumatic. Equally disturbing are the practical lessons: how to manage Edward's household, how to supervise his servants, how to anticipate his needs and wants without him having to voice them. You're being trained like a dog to respond to his moods. Men dislike coming home to domestic problems, your mother advises. Keep household matters to yourself unless he specifically asks. Never disturb him in his study without good reason. Always have a fresh shirt ready if he wishes to go out unexpectedly. Don't speak of illness or feminine complaints. Men find such topics distasteful. If he comes home in a temper, withdraw quietly until he calms. The subtext is clear. His comfort comes first. His moods dictate the household atmosphere. His needs supersede yours in every situation. You also receive subtle warnings about keeping his interest, hints that if you become boring, demanding, or too assertive, he might seek comfort elsewhere. Victorian men commonly keep mistresses or visit prostitutes, and while this behaviour isn't openly condoned, it's tacitly accepted as long as they maintain appearances. If your husband strays, it's considered your failure for not keeping him satisfied at home. 3 weeks before the wedding, you meet with Edward to discuss your new home, the only time you have any input into your future living situation. He shows you plans for his Grosvenor Square house, indicating which rooms will be yours, a bedroom separate from his, as is common in wealthy households, a small sitting room and a morning room for receiving female visitors. My study, library and smoking room are private, of course, he says, as if explaining to a child. I conduct business there and wouldn't want to bore you with such matters. Translation: large portions of what will supposedly be your home are actually off limits to you. He then outlines his expectations. Breakfast at 8 sharp, dinner parties twice monthly, regular musical evenings to entertain his business associates, children within the first 2 years of marriage. Your role is clearly defined: hostess, decorative wife, and future mother, nothing more. Your opinion is not sought on any of this. Why would it be? You're just the woman who will live there. As the wedding approaches, you notice changes in how people treat you. Your mother is less critical. Her job is nearly done. Your father pays you slightly more attention, perhaps realizing his authority over you is almost finished. Edward becomes more possessive, his formerly formal demeanour occasionally slipping to reveal something harder underneath. At tea with both families, he corrects your opinion on a book. I think you've misunderstood the author's intent, my dear. Women often miss the deeper philosophical implications. When you play piano at his mother's house, he stands too close, turning pages and murmuring, "No, not like that. The tempo should be more restrained." During a chaperoned walk, he grips your arm too tightly when another gentleman smiles at you. I won't have my wife encouraging attentions from other men. Not yet your husband, but already controlling, already possessive, already showing the man he'll be when legal ownership is established. A week before the wedding, your married friend Charlotte visits. She's been married 2 years to a man much like Edward, wealthy, respectable, controlling. Behind closed doors, with your mother distracted by wedding details, she offers the only honest advice you've received. "It won't be what they tell you," she says quietly, glancing at the door to ensure privacy. "Some of it is worse, some better. You'll learn to navigate it." She shows you a bruise on her wrist, normally hidden by her sleeve. Thomas has certain expectations. When I fail to meet them, he reminds me of my place. Her eyes are dull, her formerly vibrant personality subdued. She's 23 but looks 40. This is what marriage has done to her. "You can survive it," she tells you. "We all do, one way or another." That night, you lie awake wondering what kind of survival Charlotte means. Physical survival? Probably. Emotional survival? Less certain. Are you just expected to endure decades of subjugation, of being a decorative possession with no rights, no autonomy, no escape? For the first time, you truly understand the courage of those suffragists your mother dismissed. Fighting for basic rights in a world that sees you as property isn't radical. It's necessary for survival. The bedroom door closes and you realize you have no right to refuse anything. You're a week away from legal non-existence, from becoming Mrs. Edward Blackwood, a woman with no independent identity, no legal rights, no control over her own body or future. And the worst part? By Victorian standards, you're lucky. Edward is wealthy, socially acceptable, and not hideously abusive. At least not yet. This is considered a good match. This is what success looks like for a Victorian woman. As you drift towards sleep, you wonder if your next awakening will be in your own time, your own world, with your legal personhood intact, or if you'll wake to your wedding day in 1860, the last day of your existence as Margaret Harrison, before you disappear into Edward Blackwood's legal shadow. Either way, you'll never take your rights for granted again. Morning comes again, but you're not in your own bed. The lumpy Victorian mattress confirms you're still trapped in 1860. With the wedding only days away, a creeping sense of panic sets in. This isn't just a strange dream, it's starting to feel like your new reality. But today brings an unexpected reprieve. Edward is called away on business, giving you a rare day without his scrutiny. Your mother, exhausted from wedding preparations, takes to her bed with nerves, leaving you with fewer immediate obligations. For the first time since arriving in this era, you have a moment to breathe, to think, to consider what options, if any, Victorian women actually have. Marriage is clearly the expected path, the only respectable path according to society. But what if a woman can't or won't marry? What then? You find yourself in your father's library, a room you're normally discouraged from lingering in. He's at his club, so you take the opportunity to browse his books. Books are stacked just out of reach, reserved for your brothers while you practice needlework. The volumes on law, politics, science, and classical literature are considered too taxing for the female mind. You pull down a volume on British law, curious about your impending legal non-existence as a married woman. The language is dense, but the message is clear. Upon marriage, you cease to exist as a separate legal entity. Your husband gains complete control over your property, your body, your children. "Miss Margaret, what are you doing in here?" You nearly drop the book as the housekeeper, Mrs. Wilson, appears in the doorway. "Just looking for something to read," you stammer. Her expression softens slightly. "Your father wouldn't approve of such heavy reading. Perhaps I could find you a nice novel from your mother's collection." "Mrs. Wilson," you ask impulsively, "what happens to women who don't marry?" The question clearly surprises her, but she considers it thoughtfully. "Well, miss, it depends on their circumstances. Gentlewomen with family money might live as companions or with relatives. Those less fortunate become governesses if they're educated enough. The rest, domestic service, factory work, or worse." Worse hangs in the air between you. You both know what it means. Prostitution, the fate of countless women with no other means of survival. Do you know any governesses, you ask? My niece, Ellen, is a governess for the Hendersons. It's a respectable position, but she hesitates. But what? It's a difficult life, miss. Neither family nor servant. Always alone. The pay is poor, the hours long, and if the master or his sons take liberties, there's little protection. Sexual harassment and assault, another unspoken reality for working women. With no legal recourse and their reputations constantly at risk, they're incredibly vulnerable. What about teaching? At a school? That requires education most women don't have access to, Mrs. Wilson says gently, unless your father sent you to a proper ladies' college, which few do. And there it is, the fundamental barrier. Education. Victorian girls, even in wealthy families, receive only the education deemed necessary for their predetermined role as wives and mothers. Basic literacy, perhaps some French or Italian, music, drawing and dance. Nothing that might prepare them for independence. Curious to learn more, you ask Mrs. Wilson about her niece's experiences. She's hesitant at first, but eventually shares Ellen's story. 7 years as a governess in 3 different households. The isolation, the exhaustion, the constant precarity of her position. One family dismissed her with no notice or reference when their son made advances and she refused him. Without a reference, finding new employment was nearly impossible. She was fortunate the Hendersons took her, Mrs. Wilson says. Many girls in her position end up elsewhere. Again, that weighted silence, the unspoken fate of women without means. You thank Mrs. Wilson and return the law book to its shelf, your mind racing. You've always known women face discrimination in the past, but experiencing these limitations firsthand, feeling the absolute powerlessness, is something else entirely. Later that afternoon, seeking fresh air, you convince Martha to accompany you on a walk, not to the genteel parks your mother prefers, but to the busy commercial streets where you might see working women. Your Victorian self would never suggest such an expedition, but your modern consciousness is desperate to understand the full spectrum of women's lives in this era. Martha is reluctant, but eventually agrees, clearly uncomfortable with this breach of propriety. We must be back before your mother wakes, miss, and we should avoid Oxford Street, not suitable for a young lady. Of course, Oxford Street is exactly where you want to go, where you might see women working in shops, offices and factories, but you compromise on a slightly less busy area where Martha feels less anxious. Even so, the glimpses you get are illuminating. Shop girls standing for 12, 14-hour shifts, not permitted to sit even when the store is empty. A milliner's workshop visible through a window, women hunched over intricate work in dim light, their fingers moving with mechanical precision. Through an open factory door, you catch a glimpse of the truth behind Victorian manufactured goods. Hundreds of women hunched over machines, losing fingers, breathing cotton dust that will kill them slowly. Young girls, no more than 12, their small hands better suited for delicate work, already showing signs of the physical deformities that come from hours in unnatural positions. The conditions are appalling. Dark, airless rooms crowded with workers, no safety measures for dangerous machinery, no breaks except a brief lunch, no toilet facilities. Women regularly soil themselves at their workstations rather than risk losing their jobs by leaving their posts. And the pay? A pittance. Barely enough to survive on and significantly less than men earn for similar work. "Look at that, miss," Martha whispers, nodding toward a small office where a woman sits at a desk apparently doing clerical work. A typewriter girl. They say it's respectable enough, but she trails off, clearly dubious. New technologies like the typewriter are creating a few opportunities for middle-class women, but these jobs come with their own problems. The woman you're observing looks exhausted, her back painfully curved from hours of hunching over the machine, and based on Martha's reaction, even this relatively clean, skilled work carries a social stigma. As you continue walking, you pass a hospital where you notice women in distinctive uniforms. Nurses, one of the few respectable professions recently opened to gentlewomen, thanks largely to Florence Nightingale's efforts during the Crimean War. But even nursing remains controversial in 1860, still fighting to be recognised as a proper profession rather than simple women's work. My cousin tried to become a nurse, Martha says, following your gaze. Her father forbade it, said no decent man would marry a woman who'd seen such things. Again, the double bind. Work means sacrificing marriage prospects, but without marriage, women need work to survive. Your walk takes you past a small schoolhouse where a tired-looking woman is dismissing a group of ragged children. A dame school, Martha explains. A small, informal school run by a woman with basic literacy but little formal education herself. The teaching is rudimentary, the pay minimal, the social status low. Returning home, you pass a group of women washing steps and scrubbing stoops, domestic servants doing the back-breaking outdoor work while their male counterparts handle the less physically demanding indoor tasks. Yet the men earn more, have more free time, and enjoy higher status in the household hierarchy. Martha, you ask quietly, if you weren't in service, what would you do? She looks startled by the question. Do, miss. What else could I do? I'm fortunate to have a position in a good household. But if you could choose anything, if you could be educated for any profession, she laughs, then covers her mouth, embarrassed by her own outburst. Begging your pardon, miss, but that's like asking what I'd do if I could fly. It's not possible. Humour me, you press gently. She thinks for a moment, her expression softening into something wistful. I've always thought I might like to be a midwife. My grandmother was one. In our village, people respected her. She helped bring life into the world. Why didn't you? No money for training, miss. And my father wouldn't have allowed it. Said it wasn't decent work. Her expression closes again. It doesn't matter anyway. Girls like me go into service. That's just how it is. It shouldn't be, you murmur, half to yourself. Martha gives you a strange look. You've been saying odd things lately, miss. Is it wedding nerves? You manage a smile? Perhaps. But it's more than that. It's the growing recognition of just how thoroughly women are trapped. Not just by laws and social customs, but by lack of education and economic opportunity. Without these, even legal rights mean little. Back at home, you're relieved to find your mother still resting and your absence unnoticed, but the expedition has left you with a profound sense of unease. The glimpses you've seen of working women's lives are disturbing, yet the alternative, complete dependence on a man who legally owns you, seems equally bleak. Is there no middle path, no way for a woman to maintain both dignity and independence? Later that evening, when your brother returns from university, you cautiously raise the subject of women's education. His response is predictably dismissive. What would be the point? He laughs. Women's minds aren't suited to rigorous study. Medical science has proven it drains blood from the reproductive organs. You bite back a retort about this absurd pseudoscience. But some women do attend college now, you say instead. I've read about Bedford College in London. Those blue-stocking types? He makes a face. No man wants to marry a woman who thinks she's his intellectual equal. It's unnatural. And there it is again. Everything circles back to marriage. A woman's education, if she receives any at all, is valued only insofar as it makes her a more appealing wife, accomplished enough to entertain guests, but not so knowledgeable she might challenge her husband. Your curiosity piqued, you find ways over the next few days to learn more about the limited educational opportunities available to women in 1860. What you discover is simultaneously depressing and inspiring. Formal education for girls remains rare and rudimentary. Most middle and upper class girls are either taught at home by governesses or sent to boarding schools that focus more on accomplishments than academics. Working class girls are lucky to receive any education at all. Many attend school only until age 10 or 11 before entering domestic service or factory work. Yet change is brewing. Pioneers like Emily Davies and Barbara Bodichon are advocating for women's higher education. Queen's College and Bedford College in London are offering more substantive education for women, though they can't yet grant degrees. The first medical school for women will open later in the decade. These educational reformers face vicious opposition. Critics claim higher education will make women infertile, insane, or masculine. Medical experts warn that the female brain can't handle intellectual exertion without damaging the reproductive system. Religious authorities cite biblical passages about women's proper subordinate role. Despite these barriers, a small but growing number of women are fighting for educational access, not just for personal fulfillment, but as a necessary step toward economic independence. Because without education, what can women do? The options in 1860 remain painfully limited. Domestic service, the largest employer of women, offering security but low pay, long hours, and constant supervision. Factory work, slightly better paid but physically dangerous and socially suspect. Needlework, respectable but brutally exploitative. Seamstresses often work 16-hour days for pennies, going blind from eye strain in the process. Teaching or governessing, the main options for educated middle-class women, offering respectability but isolation and vulnerability. Nursing, newly respectable thanks to Florence Nightingale, but still controversial and requiring training few women can access. Writing, a rare path for educated women with talent, though most publish anonymously or under male pseudonyms to be taken seriously. And for the truly desperate, prostitution, the fate of countless women with no other means of survival in a society that simultaneously creates and condemns them. The connection between education, employment, and independence becomes increasingly clear to you. Without education, most women can access only the lowest paid, most exploitative work. Without decent work, they remain economically dependent on men. Without economic independence, legal rights mean little in practice. It's a system perfectly designed to keep women subordinate, regardless of their individual talents or desires. Your pay envelope contains 1/3 what the men receive for identical work. This stark inequality isn't just unfair, it's deliberately engineered to keep women dependent on male support, either through marriage or family. A few days before the wedding, your mother finally feels well enough to resume wedding preparations. She finds you in your room, reading a newspaper article about a woman doctor in America. "Margaret, what are you doing with your father's newspaper?" You quickly fold it away. "Just passing the time, Mother." She sighs. "These unusual interests of yours. I hope marriage settles you. A woman with too active a mind often struggles with her proper duties." "Mother," you ask carefully, "did you ever want something different before you married Father?" The question clearly startles her. For a moment, something flickers in her eyes, a glimpse of the person she might have been in another life, with other choices. Then it's gone, replaced by her usual practical expression. What a peculiar question. What else would I've wanted? Marriage is a woman's natural state. But you notice she doesn't quite meet your eyes. Now, we must finalise the seating arrangements for the wedding breakfast. Mrs. Blackwood is most particular about not seating her cousin Eliza near the Hendersons after that unfortunate incident at the charity bazaar. And just like that, the moment passes. Whatever dreams your mother might once have harboured are long buried beneath years of conformity and compromise. That night, you lie awake thinking about the women you've encountered or learned about during your time in Victorian England, the factory workers slowly being poisoned by their working conditions, the governesses walking the narrow line between gentility and servitude, the prostitutes with no other options for survival, the rare pioneers fighting for education and professional opportunities despite overwhelming opposition. Each represents a different response to the same fundamental problem: how to survive in a world designed to keep women dependent and subordinate. Some conform and find what security they can within the system. Some rebel and face the harsh consequences. Most simply endure, finding small moments of agency within their constrained lives. As your wedding day approaches, you wonder which path you would choose if forced to remain in this era. Would you become the perfect Mrs. Blackwood, sublimating your own desires to survive within the system? Would you risk everything for independence, knowing the likely outcome is poverty and social death? Or would you find some middle path, outwardly conforming while nurturing a hidden self? There are no easy answers, no perfect choices, only the stark recognition that for women in 1860, every option involves significant sacrifice of freedom, security, reputation, or self-determination. Your modern perspective makes these limitations painfully clear. But for women born into this era, with no knowledge of other possibilities, the cage might not always be visible. They navigate the world as it is, finding meaning and purpose within the narrow spaces allowed them. As you drift towards sleep, you reflect that surviving as a Victorian woman requires a particular kind of strength, not the freedom to pursue your dreams, but the resilience to endure their deferral or denial, to find purpose within constraint, to build a life in the spaces between other people's expectations. It's a different kind of courage than what's celebrated in your time, not the courage to break barriers, but the courage to live meaningfully despite them. Tomorrow brings your wedding day, and perhaps a return to your own era. Either way, you'll carry with you a deeper understanding of these women's lives, their struggles, and their quiet, persistent strength. Your wedding day dawns grey and misty, London fog seeping through the window cracks like ghostly fingers. Martha wakes you earlier than usual. There's so much to do before the 11 o'clock ceremony at St. George's Church. "Today's the day, miss," she says, her voice a mix of excitement and something else. Sadness, perhaps? You've grown close during your time in this strange Victorian life. After today, she'll remain here while you become Mrs. Edward Blackwood, moving to a different household, with different servants. "Yes, Martha, today's the day." The morning passes in a blur of preparations, the special wedding corset laced to a brutal 17 inches, the elaborate hair arrangement that takes over an hour to perfect, the white wedding dress with so many layers of petticoats you can barely move, the veil, the gloves, the tiny satin shoes that pinch your feet. By the time you're fully dressed, you can hardly breathe, not just from the corset, from the crushing reality of what this day represents, the end of your legal existence, the beginning of a life in someone else's shadow. "You look beautiful, miss," Martha whispers, adjusting your veil one last time. Your mother bustles in, already dressed in her finest gown. "Oh, Margaret!" she exclaims, her eyes filling with tears. "You're perfect. Mr. Blackwood will be so pleased." That's the goal, isn't it? Pleasing the man who's about to own you, not your happiness or fulfillment, his satisfaction with his purchase. The church is packed with people you barely know, distant relatives, business associates of your father and Edward, society people whose approval your mother desperately craves. None of them care about your feelings. This is a social and economic transaction dressed up with flowers and hymns. Edward waits at the altar, looking satisfied rather than joyful. When you reach him, he barely glances at your face, his eyes sweeping over you in that same assessing way he's always looked at you, checking that the goods are in acceptable condition. The ceremony itself is mercifully brief. The vows, love, honour, obey, stick in your throat, but you say them anyway. What choice do you have? The ring slides onto your finger, heavy and cold. A shackle, not a symbol of love. And then it's done. You're Mrs. Edward Blackwood, no longer a legal person in your own right. The wedding breakfast afterward is an elaborate affair at your parents' home. You sit beside Edward, picking at food you're too tense to eat, accepting congratulations from people whose names you barely remember. Everyone smiles. Everyone pretends this is a joyous occasion. No one acknowledges the reality that you've just been transferred from one man's ownership to another's. As the reception winds down, you notice Martha slipping through the crowd with your travelling case. It's almost time to leave with Edward for your wedding trip, a week at his family's country estate. The anxiety that's been building all day spikes sharply. Tonight is your wedding night, the night when Edward will claim his marital rights, whether you want him to or not. You excuse yourself to change into your travelling outfit, desperate for a moment alone. In your bedroom, no longer yours after today, Martha helps you out of your wedding dress and into a fashionable travelling suit of dark blue wool. Mrs. Blackwood, Martha says hesitantly. I've put something in your case, under the nightdresses. It's just, my mother taught me, for new brides. You look at her questioningly. A small bottle of oil, she whispers, blushing furiously. It can make things easier the first time. Your throat tightens with unexpected emotion. This small act of female solidarity, practical, unspoken knowledge passed from woman to help navigate a system that leaves them vulnerable, moves you deeply. Thank you, Martha. You impulsively embrace her, breaking all rules of proper mistress-servant behaviour. After a startled moment, she hugs you back. Be well, miss, she whispers. Be safe. You descend the stairs to where Edward waits, impatient to depart. Your parents and guests line the hallway to see you off. Your mother kisses your cheek, whispering last-minute advice about being a good wife. Your father shakes Edward's hand, the men exchanging knowing looks that make your skin crawl. And then you're in Edward's carriage, pulling away from the only home you've known in this Victorian life, heading toward an uncertain future as Mrs. Blackwood. The journey to the country estate takes several hours. Edward spends most of it discussing his business affairs, neither asking your opinion nor showing interest in your thoughts. You gaze out the window at the passing landscape, watching London's crowded streets give way to suburbs and eventually rural countryside. By the time you arrive, darkness has fallen. The Blackwood estate looms against the night sky, a grand but sombre silhouette. Servants emerge to welcome the new master and his bride, lining up with perfect precision as you step down from the carriage. Edward's housekeeper, Mrs. Foster, shows you to your rooms, separate but adjoining bedchambers for husband and wife. As is common in wealthy households, your belongings have been unpacked, your nightclothes laid out. The bed, enormous and draped with heavy curtains, dominates the room. You stare at it, unable to escape thoughts of what will happen there tonight. I'll send my lady's maid to help you prepare for bed, Edward says from the doorway. I'll join you in an hour. Not a request, a statement of fact. His tone makes it clear this is non-negotiable. His lady's maid, Ellen, is efficient but cold as she helps you undress and brush out your hair. She makes no effort at conversation, and you wonder if she resents having a new mistress to serve, or if she's always this detached. Either way, her silent presence only increases your anxiety. When she leaves, you sit at the dressing table in your nightgown, staring at your reflection. You barely recognize yourself, pale from months of arsenic and limited sun exposure, thin from restricted food, dark circles under your eyes from constant corset-induced oxygen deprivation. Is this really you? Or have you become someone else entirely during your time in Victorian England? The connecting door opens without a knock. Edward enters wearing a dressing gown over his nightshirt. His expression is unreadable as he approaches. "Wife," he says, and the word sounds like ownership. What follows is everything your mother's veiled warnings suggested. Clinical, impersonal, painful. Edward takes what he considers his right, with no concern for your comfort or pleasure. You endure, remembering Martha's whispered advice to new brides throughout the ages. Just get through it. When it's over, he returns to his own room without a word of affection. You lie awake in the massive bed, tears silently tracking down your temples into your hair. Is this to be your life now? Decades of this emptiness, this use of your body as an object for someone else's satisfaction? You must have eventually fallen asleep because the next thing you know, sunlight is streaming through a gap in the curtains. For a moment, you're disoriented. This isn't your bedroom at home. It isn't your Victorian parents' house either. Then you realise you're back. Back in your own bed, your own time. The Victorian nightmare is over. You sit up, gasping with relief, running your hands over your uncorseted ribs, your body that belongs to you alone. The clock on your nightstand shows the date. You've returned to exactly when you left, as if no time has passed at all, but something has changed. You have changed. The experience may have been a dream, a hallucination, or something else entirely, but the knowledge you gained feels viscerally real. You spend the day in a daze, marveling at freedoms you previously took for granted, the ability to leave your home unaccompanied, to wear comfortable clothes that don't restrict your breathing, to speak your mind without fear of social ruin, to control your own money, to exist as a legal person in your own right. That evening, unable to shake thoughts of Victorian women and their limited lives, you find yourself researching the era more deeply, not the sanitized costume drama version, but the harsh realities of women's legal status, health challenges, and social constraints. You learn about the women who fought to change those realities. Emmeline Pankhurst and the suffragettes who were force-fed in prison for demanding voting rights. Elizabeth Garrett Anderson, who became Britain's first female doctor despite being barred from medical school. Josephine Butler, who campaigned against the sexual double standard. Countless unnamed women who endured, survived, and slowly pushed for change in ways big and small. Behind closed doors, you finally collapse, bone-tired from performing perfection all day. The Victorian woman's life was a constant performance, physically demanding, emotionally draining, intellectually stifling. Even the wealthiest women paid a steep price for their gilded cages. As night falls, you find yourself unexpectedly emotional. Your brief experience as Margaret Harrison has left you with a profound connection to the women of that era, not just the famous few who defied conventions, but the millions who simply survived them. Women who navigated impossible constraints with whatever tools they had available. Women whose small acts of resistance or solidarity often went unrecorded but still mattered. You think about Martha and her secret gift of oil to ease your wedding night, about Charlotte showing you her bruises as a warning, about Mrs. Wilson sharing her niece's story to educate you, women helping women navigate a system designed to isolate and control them. You think about your Victorian mother with her glimpse of something like regret when you asked if she'd wanted something different from life, about the factory women enduring dangerous conditions for meagre pay because the alternatives were worse, about the match-selling child with phossy jaw, visible evidence of a system that used up human bodies without care. These women weren't just passive victims of their time. They were active survivors making calculated choices with the limited options available to them, finding agency where they could, building networks of support, passing down practical knowledge, creating meaning within constraint. As you lie in bed, the comfort of your modern mattress feels like a luxury beyond measure. No arsenic wallpaper, no coal smoke filtering through poorly sealed windows, no corset digging into your ribs even as you sleep. Just the simple freedom to breathe deeply, to move comfortably, to exist in a body that legally belongs to you alone. The true horror of the Victorian era for women wasn't just the obvious dangers, the toxic beauty products, the restrictive clothing, the lethal childbirth practices. It was the suffocating limitation of potential. Millions of women who might have been scientists, artists, leaders, or innovators instead channeled their intelligence and creativity into the narrow outlets permitted them. What human potential was lost to these constraints? What contributions never made? What joy never experienced? You think about the women still facing similar constraints around the world today, those still fighting for basic rights, education, and autonomy, those whose freedom to control their own bodies and lives remains contested. The work begun by Victorian reformers continues, unfinished. As you lie in bed, wondering if tomorrow will be your last day of this Victorian life, your eyes grow heavy. You're exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally. Your brief time as Margaret Harrison has given you a perspective you never had before, a visceral understanding of how far women have come and how recently. The ordinary freedoms of your daily life, education, legal personhood, bodily autonomy, career opportunities, aren't ordinary at all. They're the result of generations of women fighting, surviving, and gradually expanding what's possible. Rights you take for granted would have seemed utopian to Margaret Harrison and her contemporaries. As sleep begins to claim you, you make a silent promise to the Victorian women whose lives you briefly shared to never take these hard-won freedoms for granted, to recognize the shoulders you stand on, to continue the work they began. Your modern bed cradles you as consciousness fades. Unlike your Victorian counterpart, you can sleep deeply without fear of toxic wallpaper, of legal non-existence, of a future determined entirely by others. Your dreams belong to you. Your body belongs to you. Your life belongs to you. This simple fact that you own yourself would have been revolutionary to Victorian women, a dangerous, radical notion that threatened the entire social order, yet here you are, the beneficiary of their dangerous dreams. As you drift towards sleep, you carry with you a new appreciation for these women's quiet strength. Not just the famous rebels and reformers, but the millions who simply endured, who found dignity and meaning within crushing constraints, who passed down their practical wisdom woman to woman, who kept their humanity in a system designed to deny it. Their legacy lives in your freedom, in your education, your career options, your legal rights, your control over your own body, in all the choices big and small that they couldn't make but you can. Sleep comes easily in your safe, comfortable bed. As consciousness fades, you're grateful, not just for your modern privileges, but for the brief, difficult gift of understanding what life was like without them, for the connection to women across time who navigated impossible choices with courage, ingenuity, and quiet persistence. This understanding will stay with you, deepening your appreciation for freedoms easily taken for granted. The freedom to vote, to work, to own property, to control your reproduction, to exist legally as yourself. The freedom to breathe unrestricted, both literally and metaphorically. As you finally surrender to sleep, you carry with you the voices of Victorian women, their struggles, their survival strategies, their small rebellions and private hopes. Their stories merge with dreams, a reminder of how recently the past lives, how hard-won the present is, how unfinished the future remains. And with that, close your eyes and drift off to sleep.